Hello, everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, I'd like to remind you, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and now also on SoundCloud and Spotify. Alright, so let's just go ahead and get into this episode because it's kind of apropos of nothing outside of the fact that we are less than 90 days out from midterms, which means we are almost at the halfway point of Trump's first term as president, which is insane when you think about it, because in some ways it feels like it's been decades, and in some ways it feels like it's been like a month. And I think a lot of that disconnect and a lot of the reason why the political landscape is the dumpster fire that it is right now is that nobody really sat down and processed and did a proper postmortem on what happened in 2016 that led to Donald Trump being elected president by some, I don't know, insane clusterfuck of situation that nobody's really sat down and thought through like the way that you would normally do after an election. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. And so, of course, obviously, the obvious jumping off point here is talking about the Democrats, the big losers from 2016. Now, I'm sure everybody's noticed, but just in case you haven't, there are still some sections of Democratic voters who haven't quite seemed to process the fact that Hillary lost yet. Like, they're still kind of in that, like, disbelief stage. And obviously, there were a lot of things that went wrong with Hillary's campaign. I mean, first of all, she just ran a shit campaign. Like, who doesn't visit all 50 states? Like, come on now, really? Really? Who doesn't? Who does that? That's such a stupid, unforced error. But overall, I think one of the reasons Hillary lost, because I'll go ahead and say, I don't think there's any one reason she lost or any one reason why Trump won. I think there's a lot of different factors that, again, nobody's really sat down and thought through. But the first thing is, where we're at right now is she ran a shit campaign. And she even said it in the book. Like, I actually read what happened. I am that masochist. But she said, going into the actual campaign, that she knew she had high unfavorables. And I'm just like, okay, well, if you knew that, why didn't you do something to fix it? And there's always been, and she kind of alludes to it a bit in the book, and I don't know if she really meant to do that, but there was always this attitude that I got from her in her campaign, and it turns out I guess a lot of other people did too. But even at the time when she was running, there was like that vibe that she didn't feel like she really had to. Like this is some kind of formality, and this is a waste of my time, this is boring, can we just appoint me president and get on with it? And it rubbed me the wrong way. I think it rubbed a lot of other people the wrong way. So just understanding that she ran a shit campaign and really wasn't all that strong of a candidate to begin with is something that a lot of people on the left have not dealt with and really sat down and thought out. Because, next thing, they've managed to blame almost everything on the planet other than Hillary Clinton for her loss. I mean, Russians, emails, hackers, deplorables, stupid people. I don't know, just anything that they could possibly think of to say other than Hillary was a shit candidate and that's why she lost, they've run with. And that's why they so desperately buy into this whole Russiagate thing, which, honestly, I mean, I don't know. Did they hack emails? I don't know. Did they interfere with elections? Maybe. Is it why Hillary lost? No. Do I think Trump colluded? I don't think he's that smart. I don't think he's smart enough to have colluded with Russia. But, like I said, it goes to this idea that they want something other than Hillary to blame for the loss. And they keep waiting for either the other shoe to drop with this Russiagate thing, or for something to come along to have impeachment hearings on Trump. And it's like, you guys, you keep waiting for something that's not going to happen. There's no magical bullet that's going to come along and save you. You just got to deal with the fact that your candidate lost. And for what it's worth, it was funny to me when the whole Russiagate thing kind of kicked off, because it was somewhat known before the election. Like, Obama knew about it, and basically his whole response to Putin was, cut it out. Like, really, you weren't all that concerned about it. And nobody was really concerned about it until the day after Donald Trump got elected, because then it became real. Because before then, everybody thought, oh, it doesn't matter, who gives a shit, Hillary's going to win, nothing's going to be affected, it doesn't matter. But then the second she lost, all of a sudden, all you heard about was Russia, 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 Russia. And it's like, but no, you're not coming to grips with the fact why you lost. And I was willing to kind of give them that for a little while. Like, I was like, okay, like maybe a month or two, maybe 3, because this is kind of a bad loss. It was not really an expected loss. And so you're kind of like fumbling in the wilderness, trying to figure out a reason for why you lost. But the fact that it's still going almost 2 years after the fact is like, when are you going to deal with the fact that this is not why she lost? Like, when are you going to come to grips with the fact that there's no smoking gun here? Like, this dude's not going to get impeached over this. Like, the pure fact that they've not sat down and dealt with their loss just means you're going to have more losses. Because if you don't figure out why you lost, you're not going to be able to prevent that from happening again. So that's why I'm surprised, but not surprised that they're still just like holding on to this like sliver of hope that suddenly like Trump will like poof and disappear into the ether. But it's not happening, guys. Just let it go. Do better in 2020. Do better in the midterms. Figure out why you lost and go from there. Another thing that they've never really sat down and come to grips with is the whole DNC issue, which I've not read Donna Brazil's book yet. It's on my reading list, but I've read enough excerpts and interviews and stuff to kind of get the gist of what was going on behind the scenes. And it just sounds like it was just pure fucking insanity. Like, Brazil has come out and basically said that Hillary Clinton was running the DNC. She really had no control over anything. Basically, all of the money that was going into the DNC was from Hillary because Obama pretty much left them bankrupt. And just this whole insane bad look of basically looking like Hillary bought the DNC. And that's still something that is not talked about nearly enough, I don't think, especially by the Bernie bros. Like, I don't know why they are not screaming bloody murder over this, because basically that's how their candidate got screwed. Like, it's obvious that like everybody in the DNC was in the bag for Hillary, and no matter what Bernie did, he was not going to get that nomination. Which this is my little conspiracy theory, and I'm the only one that ascribes to this, but this is what I think actually happened back in 2008 when Hillary kind of like stepped aside for Obama. I don't think she did it without some kind of assurances from the DNC that in 2016 that nomination was going to be hers. Like I said, my little conspiracy theory, just from what I know about the Clintons, I have no proof of that whatsoever, but it sounds to me in my head that that is something that Hillary would do, and that would make sense for her to do, because, I mean, if you're asking her to step aside in 2008 to this thing that she feels she's entitled to, I don't think she's doing it without some promises. So that's just my little theory on that. But going back to the whole Bernie bro thing, and again, I still don't understand why they have not gone in full hog on this, but something that the DNC and Democrats have refused to do is acknowledge the Bernie bro wing is still there, they still exist, and it's really coming back to bite them on the ass right now with this whole democratic socialism thing. Like, that wing of the party didn't disappear. Like, some of them might have voted for Hillary. I mean, Bernie got down with Hillary, whatever. I understand it. Like, you have obligations, and, well, actually, I can't even say Bernie has obligations to his party because he's not part of the Democratic Party. Like, he's not a member, he's an independent. But I get it. I'm sure there was a lot of influence. There was a lot of pressure being put on him to do that. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. But everybody else who kind of got in line, they didn't go away. They're still here. And now you've got this whole Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thing going on, and this whole, like, the Bernie bros, the Bernie wing of the party is trying to take over the party. And if somebody had sat down after 2016 and kind of talked to these people and tried to reconcile, maybe the Democratic Party wouldn't be in the situation where they're at right now, where you're starting to have like this, it almost looks like kind of like a hostile takeover of the party by that wing, where they're trying to take everybody and just rip them so far left. And it's just like, This is what happens when you ignore a wing of your party and think that they went away, and obviously they didn't. They're still there. Another reason why I think this whole democratic socialism thing is happening is because, again, Democrats were not prepared to lose in 2016. Like, they thought it was a slam dunk, and quite frankly, so did all of us. Like, we all thought that was a, like, it was just, of course Hillary's going to win. Like, what, Trump's going to beat Hillary? But what ended up happening is they were so ill prepared for the idea that she might not win. And they had kind of gone whole hog in on Hillary, with her actually being like the face and the voice of the party, that once she was gone, once she lost, it left this huge power vacuum of, well, then if we're not going to be the party of Hillary, who are we? And that is also where I think the Democratic Socialists are trying to step in and be the face and the voice of the party. That's why you see Alexandria here, there, everywhere other than her own district. You've got people like Cynthia Nixon trying to glom onto this. You got Bernie Sanders going all over the place. And so it's kind of, it set up this power vacuum that it's going to be an interesting struggle to see who wins this power struggle, because I don't know. I mean, the snarky part of me kind of wants the Democratic Socialist wing of the party to win, because I think that would be much, much more easily defeated than if you had something more like a centrist Democratic Party that wasn't like batshit crazy and could actually like articulate a message clearly and didn't embarrass themselves at every turn. But if that's the way they want to go, then vaya con Dios, please make everyone else's life easier. And the last point that I want to touch on before I move on from the Democrats and not learning anything from 2016, and I'll admit, this may be me being in my typical, like, little political media bubble, but you still have this whole deplorables mindset, where there's coastal elites and everybody else is just like some ignorant ass-backwards rubes who live out in BFE, and why don't they get down with the program? Like, you still have that, you still have the media, you still have certain people in the Democratic movement who are treating people like shit. And you're not going to get these people back into your fold if you keep insulting them. And that's another thing that they haven't learned from 2016. Like, Hillary Clinton calling people a basket of deplorables was a really fucking dumb idea. But it told those people exactly what Hillary Clinton and everybody who supported Hillary Clinton thought of them, and that bit them in the ass. But there are still certain people who haven't learned that screwed her over in a huge part and made a lot of people want to back Trump. And I even see it now, like with the media coverage of Trump. I see people who are like, I don't want to like Trump, but the way that they talk about Trump and the way that they talk about Trump supporters makes me want to support Trump. I don't back that, by the way. I'm not supporting this orange Cheeto piece of shit. That's not happening. But I see it happening with other people, and it's like, when you do that, you have to understand that you're creating this like underdog character that people all of a sudden want to root for. And then you're still reinforcing his base's notion that, you know what? These people think we're scum. These people think we're assholes. So you know what? We're going to ride with the dude who doesn't think that we're that. So it's the self-defeating thing that I wish, a little bit of self-awareness. Like, that's all I'm asking for from Democrats at this point. It's just self-awareness. Understand why you lost. Understand that you need to figure out how to not be assholes, basically. And just get it together, guys. Just get your shit together. Honestly, it's been almost 2 years. Like, my patience has run thin. I'm pretty sure everybody's patience has run thin at this point. So, yeah, just Democrats, sit down, figure it out, come to grips with the fact that you ran a shitty candidate who ran a shitty campaign, and just get it together and move on. 2016's gone. Trump's president. Nothing magical is going to happen to make him not be president outside of you guys winning in 2020. So just get it together, guys. Just get it together. Now, let's move on to the Republicans, which I'm sure some of you are saying, well, they won, so what is there to discuss here? Well, yeah, they won, but when your prize for winning is Donald Trump, did you really win anything? Or would it really have been Not that I'm saying that I want Hillary to be president. I certainly don't want that either. But maybe, just maybe, it might have been a little better for the Republican Party if Trump wouldn't have won and became president of the United States. So I kind of want to talk about where they screwed up, because, I mean, obviously you have to have a massive amount of screw-ups for Donald Trump to be your presidential nominee for your party. Like, you fucked up horribly somewhere for that to even happen. And the first place I think they fucked up is you ran way too many candidates in the primary. Like, they started out with 17 candidates. That's too many candidates. And I know there's no lid on how many candidates you can run, and I don't think there's any way in the RNC bylaws or anything that you can like cap it, but you can kind of probably influence certain people to be like, just sit this one out, or to kind of winnow down the field, because when you have 17 people running for the nomination for your party, it's kind of like, it's like the Hunger Games, where like everybody got let loose and like everybody's running towards the cornucopia, and all of a sudden there's people being killed left and right, and people just going in on each other, and everybody's trying to get to the cornucopia to get everything that they need to be able to survive the Hunger Games. That's what that was. Like, that's just too many candidates, and a lot of people, I think, got bounced out too early because of that. Because there was just, when you have that many people, you can't focus on any one person, unless that one person that you start focusing on is the loudest, brashest, biggest asshole in the room. And that is how Donald Trump got the nomination. You basically, I mean, Donald Trump is not a politician. He's basically just like a one-man wrecking ball. He just kind of goes around and just does whatever the hell he wants to do. He acts however he wants, and it just takes out things. It just like knocks things down. And if you're in like the mindset of being a politician and not basically being a bull in a china shop, you're not going to be able to counteract that. Especially if you're trying to go with, okay, say, we'll use Rand Paul, because obviously I think that Rand Paul got bounced out too soon. That's my opinion. But if you're trying to deal with, you're trying to deal with Trump, and then you're also trying to deal with like 15 other dudes, like, where do you put your attention? Like, of course, when you run that many people, it's bound to not end in the way you want it to. And especially when you look at the fact that, like, okay, they had 17 people, the Democrats ran 2. You had Hillary, you had Bernie, and that's it. And I bring this up because obviously, I think that's a huge part of where this all went sideways for the Republican Party. But also, I see this starting to happen with the Democrats for 2020, where you're starting to see a lot of names being thrown out there in a somewhat serious fashion, where I'm almost afraid that they're going to fall into that same pitfall that the Republican Party fell into, where you run so many candidates that it's like nobody can focus on any one candidate unless that one candidate is somebody like Trump. So there's no Democratic equivalent to Trump. So I don't know, like, if you ran 17 Democratic candidates, who would possibly make it out of that alive? Like, I don't know. And whoever makes that alive, I don't see anybody in the party right now who has a snowball's chance in hell against Trump. I mean, he's going to eat them alive. Like, if Hillary didn't have the stones to go after Trump the way she should have, I don't see anybody else on the bench that's going to do it. Anyway, back to Trump and the Republican Party and their 17 damn candidates. Another problem that was kind of brought to light by that is that even after having 8 years of Obama to shore up some kind of identity for the GOP, they failed to do so. And that, I also think, contributed to why there were so many people running, because there's so many different brands of Republicanism running. Like, you got 17 people, like, they're not all on the same page. You got your Rand Pauls, you got your Chris Christies, you got everybody in between, you got Jeb, you've got Marco Rubio. Like, there was no, like, central identity to the GOP at that point. And so, basically, it's just, your party was so weak that Trump took it over. Which, by the way, Trump, up until he ran as a Republican, was not a Republican. Like, am I the only person that remembers he stumped for Hillary in 2008? Like, this dude is not a conservative. He's not a Republican. He's an opportunist. He saw his chance. He knew it wasn't going to happen in the Democratic Party because, obviously, Hillary. So, dude was just like, fuck it, I'll run as a Republican. And then somehow, magically, because everybody else was so weak and the party was so weak, that he somehow got the nomination. So I think that was a huge failing of the Republican Party to not have taken the 8 years under Obama and to really shore up an idea of, okay, we are the GOP, this is what we stand for, and here are our candidates that can toe our party line and tell you who the GOP is. They didn't have that, and so they got stuck with Trump. And so now, for better or for worse, the Republican Party, the Republican brand, the GOP has become the party of Trump, which I don't know how exactly you come back from that, because it's really like Trump is still holding rallies like he's running for president, and these rallies, I don't think this man ever reads off a teleprompter. He just kind of goes off the cuff and just says whatever the fuck he wants, but a lot of it seems to buy into some very ugly, divisive parts of American culture. And the problem I have with that is, and of course, I'll preface this by saying that whenever somebody becomes president, like the party that's, whether it's like a Republican wins, the Republican Party kind of starts to ape that person's style. Like if a Democrat wins, the Democrats kind of start to ape that person's style. You're starting to see, I call them the mini Trumps. Like the rise of the mini Trumps, like the Kemps and the Kobachs and the stuff like that, where you're rushing in to kind of try to like out douchebag Trump. And that's what the Republican Party is becoming. And I say that because I live in Georgia, so I watched the Brian Kemp, Casey Cagle race. And Cagle was much more of a regular, normal, centrist, conservative GOP guy. And he got his ass kicked by Kemp. So it seems like that is really the direction that the Republican Party is going in. And I'm curious to see how this is going to play out in December, because obviously, like, the mini Trumps are beating out the centrists. But I'm interested to see if the mini Trumps can beat out the Democrats. And not just in, like, congressional races and stuff like that, but I mean, like, governorships, lieutenant governors, attorney generals, stuff like that. Because, I don't know. That's a bad look for the party. And I don't know how you come back from this, like, almost, I don't want to say overt, because it's very, very, very thinly veiled, like, racism and xenophobia and just kind of classism in a way. And it's a bad look. I don't know how you come back from that. So, honestly, yeah, the Republicans won. I mean, they have the White House, they have the Senate, they have the House, but is it really the best thing that could have happened for them with Trump being the head of this? I don't think so. I think this is going to do a lot of long-term damage to the party brand. I think it's going to take a long time to come back from Trump. I think they can, but it's going to take either like something really extreme to happen, like extreme landmark legislation to try to rebrand the Republican Party, or it's just going to take decades for this to kind of like fade into the background and kind of go away. All right, so moving on from the Republicans to the Libertarian Party, which this is a hard one for me. And I'm going to go ahead and preface this by saying within the Libertarian Party, I think there's a lot more freedom and a lot more tolerance for people not coalescing behind a ticket than there is in like the DNC or the RNC. Like once the ticket's been picked, everybody's kind of expected to like line up behind those people and kind of like push them along. And you don't really have that in the LP, for better or for worse. I think it's for better because, I mean, if you don't like somebody, you should be free to say that you don't like them. But I can't think of very many other like times, especially in like the DNC or the RNC, where a ticket was this polarizing to the particular party that it's for. Now, here's my thing. I understand both sides of the argument about the Johnson Weld ticket. And this is one argument that I will concede that both sides, while completely opposed to each other, both sides are absolutely 100% right, to the point where you almost can't even argue, because those who are against the ticket said that basically the Johnson Weld ticket was not particularly libertarian. It's not the most libertarian ticket that's ever been run. And they're right. You're absolutely 100% fucking right. Don't come at me on this. But the other side of that argument, the people that do back that ticket, point to the fact that they did numbers. And again, they are absolutely 100% fucking right. Don't come at me. That's the problem with this argument, is that both sides are factually correct. And it kind of comes down to, and I talked about this a bit in the episode that I did about the Libertarian Party and where it's at right now. It really comes down to what you think the party should be promoting. And again, I get both sides of the argument. I get the people who want to argue that you should be pushing a message, but I tend to come down a little more on the side of the Libertarian Party. It's a political apparatus. Their job is to find people who can win elections. So pointing to this ticket and saying they did better numbers than any other ticket has ever done, yeah, they're right. You can't really argue with that. But here's what I would like to see happen. And I think it is starting to happen finally, but both sides have been, for the past, almost 2+ years now, because this conversation started as soon as the ticket was announced. Neither side has been willing to talk to the other. Everybody talks past each other. Everybody talks over each other, but nobody talks to each other to have this conversation about the fact that both sides are right. And that at some point, the party is going to have to figure out a way to maybe not make a compromise, but at least reconcile the fact that both sides are right, and that somewhere in the middle is where we need to be meeting. And I say that I think this is starting to happen because if you haven't listened to it, I'll try to figure out how to put a link to a podcast in the show notes. But Michael Malice a couple of weeks ago hosted both Matt Welch and Tom Woods on his podcast, basically to have this conversation, to start a conversation about whether, like, not even like a particular conversation about any one particular matter, but just the idea that people from different sides of the party can sit down and talk to each other and just have a civil, rational conversation. Like, it wasn't even a debate or an argument. It's just a nice, normal conversation between two groups of people who generally agree on the fact that we all want the party to go in a certain direction. Like, we all want the same thing, but everybody wants to take a different path. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just finally to see people from different parts, different wings of the party, just sit down and talk to each other. And what was so interesting to me about it was that even Malice had said before, like, announcing the podcast, he was afraid to announce it too soon because, oddly enough, and this surprised me that he felt this way, that he was afraid that the Twitter backlash or the social media backlash that either Matt or Tom would face would kind of not compel them, but maybe make them want to back out of doing that episode, which I thought was interesting that, like, Malice, of all people, would worry about that. Because it's not, I mean, obviously he knows Matt, he knows Tom. I don't think either one of those men would have been the one to, like, back away from a conversation just because some people on Twitter wanted to say some shit about it. But just the fact that that's where the atmosphere was, or maybe still is, I think, honestly, I do think that that episode of Malice's podcast really did help a lot. But just that idea that was something that he was afraid of, and that was the environment and just the general vibe of where things were, that kind of, it surprised me. It honestly did. But yeah, podcast went absolutely fine. I wasn't even aware that Matt and Tom had never met before doing that episode, which I thought was like kind of like when you know two people and you just assume they know each other, but then it turns out they never met, and it's just kind of like, oh, really? Okay. But yeah, I mean, they were fine with each other. I mean, there was nothing ugly between the two of them. Obviously, Tom had a lot to say, about Sarwalk and Boaz, and kind of going back to the whole Twitter feud and their attitudes, like Sarwalk and Boaz's attitudes towards Tom Woods and kind of his followers and that whole faction of the party. And things got a little spicy with that, but between Matt and Tom, things were fine. Like, it was not that big a deal. It was very friendly. It was very cordial. It was fine. Like, everybody was expecting it to be like some kind of bloodbath, and I'm just like, neither one of those dudes is that dude. So I don't. It was just the whole thing leading up to it just struck me as odd, and I don't know if people were like disappointed with the episode or were expecting more from it. But yeah, if you haven't listened to it, definitely go listen to it, because I think it's a great episode. I think everybody brought up really good points. I think Malice did a great job of moderating. And yeah, I hope to see more of that in the future, where you start to have different wings of the party sit down and actually talk to each other. And even people who are technically outside the party, like people that are like me, who do identify as a libertarian, but I am not a member of the LP, and I still don't plan on becoming one anytime soon. Just want to put that out there. But kind of moving on from that, something that I've started to see a little bit online that's starting to bother me, and this kind of goes back to 2016 and the whole kind of same thing that I talked about with the Democratic Party, of not reconciling the different wings of the party and not acknowledging that they existed, and that just because wing A won, wing B did not go away. I'm going to try to do this without saying names, but there's a lot of pettiness going on Twitter lately. And I think some people need to stop it. Like, knock it off. Actually, you know what? Screw it. Let's just name names. What? Can somebody please take away Sarwalk's Twitter from him? Because he just... Why? Why is he like this? You're a grown-ass man. Like, why are you this fucking petty on Twitter? You're not 16. You're a grown-ass man. I'm pretty sure he's like the same age as me, and I'm 37. And I'm like... there's a lot going on there, and it's pissing a lot of people off, and I think there's going to really be, it's going to be something in 2020, like, it's going to pop off, and I think a lot of people are going to be gone in 2020, but mainly what I would like to see out of the Libertarian Party going forward is just this idea of deciding what it is that you really want the party to be. Like, if you want it to be a party of principle, cool, that's fine. Elect people or nominate people who are going to push your principles, but don't maybe necessarily expect them to win. Personally, I like winning. That's just me, and I don't hold any illusions that like we're going to win in 2020 and there's going to be a libertarian president. But to that point, like, I've been listening to a lot of Larry Sharp's interviews lately, and he's kind of grown on me. Like, I didn't really like him off the rip. He said some things that I was kind of like, no, dude. But he, for better or for worse, like, he's not simply in this to push, like, a message. He's in it to win it. Like, he's ready. Like, he wants to be governor of New York. And even his little tagline, I kind of love it. It's like, it's Larry Sharp with an E. The E stands for electability. And it's just like, it's funny. Like, not funny, haha, but like, it's been a while, if ever, that libertarians have had somebody kind of like him who is willing to go out and really sell himself, really pitch it. And not in a way of like just pushing a message, but trying to win an election. So, I mean, I get it. Don't at me. I understand. This is something that's going to have to be hashed out, but I do really want it to be hashed out before 2020, because I think if we can all kind of get it together and kind of get somewhat on the same page, as much as you're going to get libertarians on the same page on anything. If we can have something of a unified front and have a candidate that maybe we can all mostly kind of, for the most part, get behind, maybe we can finally get to the 5%. Like, that's all I want from 2020. I want 5%. That's it. Like, that gets you the permanent seat at the table. That eliminates this whole conversation of getting into debates, of trying to, like, get national coverage, get national prominence. Just get that 5%. Find somebody that can do that everybody can kind of be somewhat happy with, and that's the way to go, I think. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you if you've stayed this long. Thank you. And as always, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Spotify. Take care, and until next time.